scripture is probably one of the favorites among seminarians because every seminarian walks in thinking of something they want to change. Something that they see the church doing, and they love the church, but they also recognize the need for the church to change and grow. When it comes to the temple was a place where people would go to make sacrifice in order to be cleansed so they would be ready for holy days like Passover. So the fact that there are money changers there that will change the government money into temple money, and then people who will sell you all of those things that you need in order to sacrifice so that you can be cleansed, kind of seems like a natural course, a natural thing for the temple. And yet, this structure has become broken. It is a broken structure. It doesn't work because that is the number one reason that there are a number of people that couldn't even participate in Passover because they couldn't buy the dove. They couldn't buy their sacrifice. And they couldn't be cleansed. It was a structure that was built and based on Scripture, based on the laws that God laid down and passed down throughout the generations. It had deep, important roots. And the temple had this structure set up so that people could come and have the convenience of buying your sacrifice, taking it into the temple, and the priest would do your sacrifice and you could go out clean. But Jesus walks in and sees the space. And it's not a small space, it's massive. It takes up acres and acres, and the money changers aren't in the most sacred of spaces. They're out in the yard of the temple space. But Jesus sees this and he starts flipping tables and making a whip, and it's pure anger that we see. And it shocks so many, but a seminarian just relishes in it because so many times that injustice is felt. We see that people come in and out of churches and injustices are brought out. We go to other churches thinking that we'll find a better space there. We find throughout history, we have seen churches reform and change and split over the injustices and the table flipping. And we realize there's no structure that ever works. Sometimes the rules and laws that we lay down in order to help people meet what we think are the right rules and structures laid out by God are the very things that are keeping people from God. Which is a heartbreaking realization. There's debate about what all the money changers were doing. It doesn't say specifically in our gospel today that they were taking advantage of people, although there are other scriptures that talk about Jesus saying, "You've turned this into a den of thieves." But today we just have people recalling scripture that says you'll have zeal for the house of God. Zeal for the house of God is a wonderful thing. But sometimes I struggle with our intensity for space. We see in the news today how there is a struggle between Holy Land and Promised Land, and we see in the gospel how that struggle is revealed. We see in the Old Testament how it continues to build tension in communities, And we see in our own lives how we want to claim space and make it important in one way or another. And sometimes those claimings are so detrimental. I don't believe that the Promised Land was ever meant to be a plot of earth. I think that it was a strong and important symbol. It was the space that encouraged and represented freedom for a people where they could rule themselves and feed themselves. And that is a beautiful thing. But as soon as we put all of that power on some kind of boundary space and don't remember that God gave that power to us ourselves, and it should be something that we carry with us wherever we go, we are again forced to be disrupted and flipped over. Throughout the Hebrew Bible, we see that the people will walk into the Promised Land, and then something will happen and they'll be dispersed and sent out. And it's an ebb and flow throughout history. Jesus walks into Jerusalem, this Promised Land, to celebrate Passover as a good Jew should, and finds that this land has been claimed, but not in heart. They've been building this glorious temple for 46 years, and oh, it's amazing. Acres upon acres dedicated to God, or so they say, but then when you go in and you find that the gatekeepers are money changers who are going to tell you how much it will cost in order to be cleansed and in order to be a part of these holy days, you realize that the land has been misused. And all of that beautiful building and space that has been claimed for God has really, truly just been claimed for human hubris, as it always tends to end up. Today we celebrate getting our parking lot doors fixed here at the church. And over the past 12 months, we have worked very hard to repair many different things around this building that have just been falling apart and weighing us down. It has been an exhausting process. It has been a slow process. And it's been one that continually makes us go back and find money elsewhere, asking for people to bring in money so that we can pay for the repairs. And I watch this church, this people, work hard to make this building last. And it is a treasure and a gift, but also sometimes I worry we lose focus quickly. It is so easy to be caught up in the need for the next fundraiser in order to take care of this building that we forget all of the other things that our church is called to do. Or we avoid talking about all the important things that we know might lose us, God forbid, money or donors. Seminarians walk in ready to flip over the church because they don't have to work with all the dynamic, and the longer you're in a pastoral leadership spot, the more you work with all those dynamics, and the more you want to stop talking. As you're always stuck between the politics of the building and the space, the faith and the growth of the spiritual well-being, and the individual lives of everyone in the congregation. Life is complicated and messy, but what we are called to be reminded of is, how do we gatekeep? And how do we welcome? celebrations, and where are we wasting it? And for each person, I know that that is different. And it is a struggle to find that balance. But when we read the scripture today, I see Jesus realizing that the whole community just kind of got lost in the rules and regulations and did not remember the meaning. The purpose of cleansing laws was so that people could come to a space of worship and do something tangible that helped bring them to redemption. Sometimes we need that tangible thing, which is why we've gotten so caught up in space as humanity. In borders and boundaries and walls, we get caught up in those things because they're tangible. They're the things we can interact with. They're the things we can understand. But spirituality is what we're really called towards. And borders and boundaries and walls have no place in our spirits and faith. So how do we live that as a community of faith? How do we live that where we somehow find balance between building a space that is safe for all, but also doesn't build those spiritual walls and opens to all, makes accessible to all the ability to live a faithful life, be a part of worship and celebration, to realize the sacrifice and also the blessing that comes with faith. May we be a community that finds a way to break free from the boundaries that we have laid upon ourselves as humans and walk into a space that is spiritually uplifting and cleansing for all. The Lord be with you.